Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's Urban and Community IPM webinar, Spotted, Dotted, and Spongy. Have you seen these invasive pests? I'm Cherie Rojas, the Associate Director for the UC IPM Urban and Community Program. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to have presenting today Cherie Shook and Lindsey Hack. Our presenters are dedicated invasive species educators for our UC IPM program who actively track emerging pest threats in California. They focus on the identification, impact, and reporting of invasive pests, working closely with the UC Master Gardeners to ensure that communities have the resources to stay informed and prepared. With expertise in education and outreach, they are here to provide up-to-date insights on invasives like spotted lanternfly, shot-hole borer, spongy moth, and many more. So thank you for joining us. Cherie and Lindsey, you may now share your slides and begin.
Thanks, Cherie. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us. I'm Lindsey Hack.
And I'm Cherie Shook. It's great to see everybody. There's a lot of people on here spending their lunchtime on a Thursday to talk about invasive pests. Lindsey and I joined the UC IPM crew last year, just focusing on invasive pests. So we have a lot of information that we would love to pack into 45 minutes. So we picked out the most important stuff we want to share with you today. We're going to cover a little bit about what invasive species are and why we should care about them, what is being done in California, some public awareness campaigns that you may have seen or may not have seen, some pests you might have seen in the news, current quarantines, some emerging threats, and what we can all do to help.
So pictured here are just a few of the many invasive species in California, and we won't have time to talk about all of them today, but we will talk about some of them after a bit of background. We also don't have time to get into every detail about each species, but we will be providing a lot of links to many great resources on the web, and we encourage everyone to check these out, particularly if you live in regions that have where these pests have been detected. And just a reminder, all of the links we mentioned will be sent to you after the webinar, so no need to rush to write them down or anything like that. To start, why should we care about invasive species? So they impact all of us. They negatively impact the supply of food and water, the environment, and sometimes public health and safety. Dealing with them is also very expensive. It's estimated that worldwide $1.3 trillion have been spent to address invasive species over the past 50 years. And this photo on the right shows extensive damage to a forest in the eastern US caused by one of the invasive species we're going to cover today, the spongy moth. And you may have heard plants and animals being described as non-native or invasive, and we're just going to talk about the difference. So in a nutshell, all invasive species are non-native, but not all non-native species are invasive. Non-native species are organisms that don't occur naturally in a particular place, and many of them don't cause problems and are even beneficial to humans. For example, many of our food crops are not native to California, but are also not invasive. Invasive species are a subset of non-native species that harm the environment, the economy, or public health. For example, Scotch broom, the plant shown in the photo on the right, is invasive in California, but forsythia, another flowering shrub in the photo on the left, does not. Is not invasive. So you may be asking, why do some species become invasive while others don't? The answer is complex, but generally, invasive species tend to possess certain traits that help them to spread quickly, including the ability to adapt to many different environments, the ability to reproduce quickly, and lack of natural predators where they're introduced. So all kinds of organisms can be invasive, and here are just a few examples. So invasive species can be plants like water hyacinth, invertebrates, including spiders, snails, and insects like dotted propsine leaf beetle, vertebrates such as birds, fish, and mammals like wild pigs, and pathogens that impact plants and animals like sudden oak death. And just really quickly, we're going to talk about how invasive species spread. While they can spread naturally, they're mainly spread through human activity. And many are introduced through interstate and international commerce. They can hitchhike by accident on vehicles like trains, trucks, airplanes, and personal vehicles, or can be brought by residents moving household items. Movement of nursery stock, produce, and firewood are also common sources of introduction. And some invasive species are brought in on purpose, including some ornamental plants that later become invasive when they escape into the environment. So imported plants, produce, and cargo are routinely inspected for pests, but this is a challenging task. And just to give a couple of examples, the photo on the top here shows imported roses being inspected. Because insect eggs and other pests can be quite small and hidden inside nooks and crannies, you can imagine how some might be missed. And you may have also heard about spotted lanternfly, an invasive pest that's not here in California, but has been intercepted on items being transported into our state. And the lower photo here shows spotted lanternfly egg masses that were found on a metal structure being delivered to California. So who's working to fight invasive pests in California? The short answer is a lot of people. Here are just a few organizations working collaboratively to solve invasive pest issues in California. The California Department of Food and Agriculture, or CDFA, which is funding the outreach work that we do here, UC Cooperative Extension, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, CAL FIRE, the UC Master Gardeners, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, county agriculture commissioners, and many other county, state, and national organizations. Also, the California Invasive Plant Council, or Cal-IPSC, is a nonprofit organization that focuses on invasive plants. And finally, the California Invasive Species Advisory Council, or CISAC, is a state-appointed interagency group that meets regularly to discuss invasive pest issues in California. They determine statewide priorities and make recommendations about invasive pests affecting our state. CISAC also serves as a hub for coordinating efforts across organizations. The important takeaway here is that invasive species cause problems that impact Californians in many ways, requiring the collaboration of many government and non-government agencies to address. So we covered who, and now we'll quickly go over what is being done in California. The first line of defense and most effective strategy is prevention. So that means keeping invasive pests from arriving in the first place. Once an introduction happens, the goal shifts to detecting and responding to it as quickly as possible. This is because it's much more effective and less costly to deal with infestations early before they become widespread. Some examples of prevention and early response efforts include border checkpoints, where vehicles coming into California are inspected for produce and other items that could harbor pests, detector dogs, which sniff incoming cargo for agricultural goods, quarantines, which are regulations that aim to prevent introductions and limit the spread of specific pests, trapping and surveying to monitor for invasive pests in the environment. And this lower middle photo shows sticky traps being deployed to monitor for invasive shothole borers, which is a beetle species we'll talk about later. And finally, eradication programs, which aim to completely eliminate an infestation before it has a chance to spread widely. So unfortunately, prevention isn't perfect, and some species become too widely established for eradication. At this point, the strategy shifts to long-term management. And once an invasive pest has been here long enough, best practices for managing it are developed through research and experience. So that is integrated pest management. Habitat restoration often involves the removal of invasive plants and replacing them with native plants, which helps to slow their spread over time, and biological control. Biological control helps to keep pests in check, which reduces their impact and makes it harder for them to spread. Natural enemies of invasive pests are identified from their native range, thoroughly researched to make sure they will not impact local ecosystems, and released into the environment. One example of this is the shoot-tip galling fly, which damages Cape ivy, a fast-growing invasive weed shown in the lower photo. These flies cause galls to form on the Cape ivy, which stunts the plant's growth and makes it much more manageable to deal with. Moving on to how you play a role, public awareness is important both in prevention and detection efforts, and also why we're here talking to you today. Often new invasive pests are detected by members of the public before they're found by professionals. To encourage the public to report suspected invasives, government agencies like CDFA have set up public reporting systems like their Report a Pest hotline. These reporting systems help agencies respond to new infestations more quickly than they could on their own. So now that we've given you a broad overview about what's being done to fight invasive pests, we'd like to briefly highlight a few big awareness campaigns intended to get the word out about small things we can do in our day-to-day lives that have big impacts. So first up, Buy It Where You Burn It is a campaign that brings awareness to the fact that many invasive pests can hitchhike on firewood, including insects like emerald ash borer, spotted lanternfly, Mediterranean oak borer, and tree diseases like sudden oak death. Using only locally sourced firewood near your destination will keep potential pests from spreading this way. You can find more information about this at don'tmovefirewood.org. And Don't Pack a Pest is another campaign that aims to prevent the spread of invasive pests that might be hitching a ride on food, plants, and other items in passenger luggage internationally. In the US, agricultural products must be declared and inspected before being allowed into the country. And the last campaign I would like to talk about is one focusing on invasive plants. They are a big problem in California and can damage ecosystems, agriculture, clog waterways, increase the risk of wildfires and flooding, and some can be hosts for other invasive species. For example, tree of heaven, which we'll talk about in more detail later. Many invasive plants in our state were introduced as ornamentals, including pampas grass, shown here in the middle. PlantRight is an organization that seeks to increase the awareness of invasive ornamental plants available for purchase. Their website suggests non-native alternatives to certain ornamental plants that can be invasive. For example, they recommend choosing California native deergrass or forester's feather reedgrass instead of pampas grass.
Well, let's move on to what's going on in the news. The news channels are a great source to increase public awareness. We often see top stories on the nightly news that bring attention to those invasive happenings in your area. They could be those campaigns that Lindsey just talked about, quarantines or other CDFA activities. And I pulled up this stats from the Don't Move Firewood .org campaign. They talked about increased awareness, the more consistency with your outreach, it actually will triple the amount of public awareness for a known invasive campaign. Increased awareness gives us more critical access to prevention, management, and eradication of invasive species across the state. So if you're sitting scrolling through social media, it often doesn't take long. I know for me, when I come across something about the environment, about agriculture, or even about invasive species, they're all an extremely useful outlet for increasing public awareness surrounding the prevention and the current CDFA programs. So there are a handful of invasive species that have been making headlines across California over the past year. And we'd like to highlight a few of those species that you may have seen in the news. Those include invasive fruit flies, nutria, aquatic mussels, and the Asian citrus psyllid, and HLB, the disease that it carries. And we're going to include a little bit of their distribution, the quarantines that are in place, and some of the reporting resources. The first species that you saw there in the news was the invasive fruit flies, and they've been in the news quite frequently over the past 2 years. We had 5 different species that were detected in various parts of the state, prompting quarantines and other regulatory actions in order to eradicate the infestations throughout 2023 and into 2024. California responds to those invasive fruit fly detections with a combination of quarantines, sterile insect releases, and consistent monitoring. These invasive fruit flies lay their eggs inside of fresh ripening fruit, which makes it really easy to spread unknowingly when people share fruits and vegetables. The Don't Pack a Pest campaign is extremely important in preventing invasive fruit flies from coming into California. California does restrict importing fresh fruit, veggies, and plant material. It's important to always source your plants locally and then visit don'tpackapest.com for all guidelines regarding your personal fruits, vegetables, and sharing with your family, friends, traveling cross country or out of country. The CDFA, along with the USDA and county ag commissioners, launched several public service campaigns, news conferences, social media alerts, and local outreach activities to educate communities, raise awareness, and encourage community support. You may have seen some of those commercials. There's one running in the Bay Area right now, and there's one running in Orange County from the CDFA. If you live in a quarantine zone, you may have also received flyers and or seen CDFA officials in your neighborhoods. There are 2 quarantines active in California right now. We have a Mediterranean fruit fly quarantine in Alameda County, the boundary shown on the right. And there is a Oriental fruit fly quarantine in Orange County. The boundaries are pictured there on the left. If you live in or travel through these areas of the state, please make sure to check the CDFA website for updated information and follow all quarantine procedures. It's important to note fruits and vegetables and plant material cannot be moved from the properties within those areas. There is a wealth of information on the CDFA website. That website is cafruitfly.com, which we will be included in the link that we email out to everybody. The key takeaways from the fruit fly news: smuggled and illegally imported fruit is the most common pathway of fruit fly infestations into California. So please help protect California's agriculture and natural resources. Please review the Don't Pack a Pest guidelines at don'tpackapest.com. The next item that we saw in the news is this nutria, these giant rodents. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife really have their hands full with these ones. These nutria destroy wetlands, marshes, agricultural crops. They carry pests and pathogens. They're present currently in the San Joaquin Delta and spreading into surrounding counties. The surveillance and monitoring is extremely difficult and labor intensive. The current public outreach is focusing on landowner awareness and property access for the CDFW staff to assist in monitoring and eradicating the nutria on private property. There's an extensive statewide eradication program for nutria in place that involves trapping, monitoring with remote cameras, ground surveys, and they do have canine detection teams working to help find these nutria. The current distribution, the first nutria were found in Merced County in 2017. But you can see on our picture here on the left, the top is the counties that we've been pulling. CDFW has found nutria in so far, with a total of 5,500 nutria being taken from our waterways. If you live on properties that contain or are adjacent to sources of water, such as rivers, canals, or ponds, CDFW is asking everyone to monitor for nutria and report all sightings. They will also, you can contact them for assistance in surveying your property. Again, we encourage you to visit their website. Theirs is wildlife.ca.gov/nutria. You can get updated detection maps. You can find all their contact information. They have a phone number and an email, and they do have a reporting site of their own for nutria. And you can also download identification guides and other outreach materials. Again, that's wildlife.ca.gov/nutria, and it'll be on the email links that we send out to you. Moving forward, if you're an avid boater, water source recreationist, there's a lot of news around the aquatic invasive mussels. And the golden mussel has been making news in a lot of areas. It is similar in appearance to and biology to the quagga and zebra mussels. They've been detected, golden mussels have been detected in the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta. And this is the first known occurrence in North America, which makes it even more important for all of us to be aware of. All of these aquatic mussels outcompete native species. They clog the water intakes and reproduce rapidly. They are transported by watercraft, trailers, and other water-related equipment, including your anchors, your ropes, anything you put in the water. Prevention programs in place include public education, monitoring for the presence of aquatic invasive mussels, and management of recreational activities. There are several campaigns around these mussels that you may be familiar with: Don't Move a Mussel, Clean, Drain, Dry, and vessels that are registered in California and operated on fresh water in the state are required to display a mussel fee sticker, and the sticker fee provides funding for infestation prevention and education. Currently, the distribution in California, on the left-hand side, the quagga and zebra mussels in the southern part of the state, kind of moving up here. You can see there's detection in the white here. Those are the detections. On the right side, the areas in red are the golden mussel detections. The areas in white are negative detections. They were tested, but no golden mussel was detected. You can find that updated information on the CDFW site also, and find all the updated information and more about the golden mussels. The last invasive pest that I'd like to cover, it's been in the news a lot lately, is the Asian citrus psyllid. This is one of the most important invasive species that all Californians should be aware of. Commercials and community outreach flyers educating about controlling ACP and preventing the spread of the deadly Huanglong Bing disease are available to communities across California. For those of you that live in Southern California, you may have seen much more of these commercials or flyers than those of us in the northern part of the state. These general campaigns remind everyone to inspect their trees for the Asian citrus psyllid and HLB monthly. Please do not remove your citrus plants, the foliage, or the fruit, and to source your trees from reputable licensed nurseries within your local area. The CDFA has a dedicated website for resources on prevention, management, outreach, and reporting, and that site is californiacitrusthreat.org. As this is such an important pest, we'd like to give you a little more information on the Asian citrus psyllid and how you can identify it and monitor for it on your own property. So the Asian citrus psyllid feeds on all citrus plants and can carry with it the HLB disease. Citrus are extremely popular in California. They say 60% of homeowners and residents have them on their property. So it's important that we're all aware of what they look like and what signs to look for in our properties. So the psyllid is a small insect, it's about the size of an aphid. It can be identified by the bright yellow eggs and red-eyed nymphs that are often tucked into the folds of the flush, which is the new growth on the citrus trees. The nymphs will secrete waxy tubules as they feed, and the adults have a brown mottled body, and they feed at a noticeable 45-degree angle, as you can see in the top picture. ACP can also infect citrus trees with a bacteria that causes a serious plant disease. It's called Huanglong Bing. We call it HLB, also known as the citrus greening disease. While this is not harmful to humans, the disease kills citrus trees in as little as 5 years and has no cure as of yet. Early symptoms, including blotchy leaf mottling and the discoloration of the fruit, and eventually lead to unmarketable produce as the disease progresses. The disease is found in several states in the Southeast as well as Texas. We can all protect our citrus trees from HLB by stopping the Asian citrus psyllid from spreading. So the state of California has implemented extensive efforts to prevent the spread of this insect and its carried disease. The map on the left shows the zones of restrictions for nurseries that sell citrus host plants and the movement of bulk citrus. Just as a reference, Zone 1, the gray area, has no detections of Asian citrus psyllid or the HLB disease. Zones 2 through 5 and 7 have detections of ACP, but none of the HLB disease. And Zone 6 in red has both the ACP psyllid and the HLB disease. At this time, HLB is currently only found in Southern California. The map on the right shows the current HLB quarantine areas. This was updated February 13th, 2025. That was last week. From these areas, movement of citrus plants or bulk fruit transport is even further restricted, and trees within the HLB quarantine areas may be mandatorily tested. If you live in any of these quarantine areas, it is extremely important to cooperate with agricultural officials and allow access to inspect the plants. You can find all the updated quarantine information on the CDFA website, so you have all the information. Just want to remind you again, it's important to monitor your citrus plants for potential infestations, and you can report any suspected cases of the psyllid or the HLB disease on the CDFA website. You can also contact your county agricultural commissioner. The presence of the waxy tubules, as you see in the upper right-hand picture, is a great indication that you have the psyllid nymphs present on your plant. It's important to control ants around your citrus trees as they interfere with natural enemies, and they'll keep them from the parasitic wasps from eating the psyllids. Chemical control may be important for limiting the spread of the psyllids. You can consult with your agriculture commissioner or pesticide professionals in your area. If you live in an HLB risk area or any of those quarantine zones, you might want to consider removing any unwanted citrus trees or planting alternative varieties in your new landscapes, given the high risk for infection. There are a lot of resources available. You can start by looking at our pest note for Asian citrus psyllid, which links to our ACP distribution and management site, as well as the californiacitrusthreat.org, where you can get a lot of information about alternatives, the quarantine zones, and all the updated information on psyllid management within California.
So now let's talk about some invasive species that you may not have seen in the news, but are still important to be aware of. Starting off with spotted lanternfly, which we mentioned earlier. It's a large plant hopper that's not in California, but it's an important insect to keep an eye out for. And the reason for that is because it's a significant agricultural and forest pest and a nuisance to the general public as well. It's currently spreading rapidly in the eastern US. The blue on the map to the right indicates regions currently infested with spotted lanternfly. Though, as we said before, it has not been detected in the wild in California, it is under an external quarantine, which means that there are measures being taken to prevent the introduction of this pest into California, including inspection of vehicles coming in from infested areas. This pest feeds on and damages a wide range of trees and woody crops, including grapevines, which can be killed by heavy infestations. Because California is a major producer of wine and table grapes, spotted lanternfly poses a big threat to our state's grape industry. A common way spotted lanternfly gets introduced to new areas is when their egg masses are unknowingly transported by people. Their egg masses can be laid on nearly any outdoor surface, like tree trunks, vehicles, and patio furniture. They can be hard to detect because they can look a bit like a smear of mud and can be laid in hard-to-see spots, including the underside of a wood pallet or that example I gave earlier about the egg masses on the metal structure. It's important to keep an eye out for these egg masses, especially if you're traveling through infested areas. And so remember earlier when I mentioned that some invasive plants can host other invasive pests? Tree of Heaven is one of them and is a preferred host plant for spotted lanternfly. Tree of Heaven is well established and widespread in California, as shown by the green areas on this map in the center. It grows fast, it's hard to kill, and it's allelopathic, which means it suppresses the growth of other plants around it. And all of these things make it a very difficult weed to deal with. If spotted lanternfly does come to California, Tree of Heaven could make it easier for it to spread. If you have Tree of Heaven in your neighborhood, this is a good spot to keep an eye out for spotted lanternfly. And as a quick side note, another invasive pest that is found in California, brown marmorated stink bug, can also feed on and spread by infesting Tree of Heaven. If you find spotted lanternfly or its egg masses in California, please report them to CDFA and visit their website here for more information. Moving on to another invasive pest of concern in California, invasive shothole borers, often abbreviated as ISHB. These are tiny beetles in the genus Eualacea that pose a threat to trees in California's parks, forests, and cities. They tunnel deep into the wood, introducing a kind of fungi that they eat, a kind of fungus. They garden the fungus, which spreads within the tree and causes a disease called Fusarium dieback. And unlike similar native wood-boring beetles that generally only infest dead or stressed trees, shothole borer is of particular concern because it attacks healthy trees as well. The disease caused by fungi associated with ISHB, Fusarium dieback, has killed thousands of trees in Southern California. Symptoms of Fusarium dieback include leaves and branches turning brown and dying back, but it's important to note that other pests and diseases can cause similar symptoms. Many kinds of trees are susceptible to the beetle and the disease, including over 60 species in California like avocado, sycamore, oaks, maples, and box elder. So some unfortunate recent news about this pest is that last year, 2 new infestations were detected in Northern California, one in the city of San Jose and one in Santa Cruz County. Additionally, the infestation in Santa Cruz is a species of invasive shothole borer that is new to the West Coast, Eualacea interjectus. This is the first detection of this species on the West Coast, and previously there were only known to be 2 species in California that are nearly identical, Polyphagus shothole borer and Kuroshio shothole borer, abbreviated as PSHB and KSHB. And they were also only known to be in, I already said that, sorry. As you can see in this picture to the right, Eualacea interjectus, the beetle on the left, is much larger than PSHB and KSHB. So how can you tell if a tree is infested? You probably won't see the beetles themselves because they're tiny and spend most of their lives inside their tunnels in the wood. One of the best indicators for this pest is their exit holes, which are the holes the adults emerge from. Their exit holes are very round compared to the exit holes of many other kinds of wood-boring insects you might see in California. KSHB and PSHB, the identical species, exit holes are about the size of the tip of a pen, whereas the new species, Eulacea interjectus, has exit holes that are closer to the width of the entire pen, so just larger than the other two. And so another symptom is that there can be discolored wood around the exit holes, but you might need to scrape away the bark to see this. For more information about invasive shot-hole borer, please visit our UC IPM pest note on ISHB, as well as the invasive shot-hole borer website, which is the link on the right, where you can find updates about this pest. And just a quick tie-in to highlight the importance of not moving firewood. Shot-hole borer can live for a long time inside wood and has been shown to spread this way. So please remember to buy it where you burn it.
Let's talk about the spongy moth for our last invasive pest today. The spongy moth is known to impact over 500 species of trees and shrubs, including oaks, poplars, willows, aspens, birches, and many fruit trees. The caterpillars are born from tight, compact egg masses that may easily be moved accidentally by humans. Hundreds of caterpillars will hatch and can defoliate entire trees. The spongy moth is a threat to California's forests, and just like spotted lanternfly, they lay their eggs on trees, rocks, and outdoor items and equipment that they can hitchhike on. Spongy moth egg masses are the most common source of introduction into new areas. It's extremely important to look out for them, and just like with our shot-hole borers, don't move firewood. Buy it where you burn it. The spongy moth egg masses are brown and spongy in texture. It's important to check vehicles, check all your cargo when traveling out of state. If seen, please report to CDFA immediately. There is some information currently available for a eradication program in California. They are occasionally detected, and we do have an eradication program in Los Angeles County. The program can be read about on their website at the CDFA spongy moth link that'll be sent out within the email. For more information about the spongy moth, you can visit the USDA APHIS website and the CDFA spongy moth profile on their website. Now that we've covered all these important invasive pests, we wanted to just remind you of all the ways that you can help prevent and help us in managing invasive pests within California. Prevention is always the best protection. Once invasive species established, they can be nearly impossible to remove. A couple of campaigns we talk about: don't pack a pest. Please avoid bringing plants, fruits, or soil across states and national borders. They could be carrying hitchhikers. Always buy it where you burn it. When camping or having a fire, always use local firewood. Moving firewood spreads destructive pests. Native plants. Support your local ecosystems by choosing native plants in your garden. They provide food and habitat for the beneficial wildlife while keeping invaders at bay. Always clean your equipment. Before leaving job sites, trails, waterways, clean your shoes, your tools, your vehicles. Invasive seeds and pests can travel unnoticed. You can take some time there's plenty of courses and resources we have within our websites to learn how to identify some of these invasive species. Knowledge is power. Recognizing the invasive pests and plants can help stop their spread early. If you spot a suspected invasive species, please report it to the CDFA, the CDFW, or your county ag commissioner. Remember to follow all guidelines and quarantine regulations. The rules are in place to protect agriculture, our native species, and our environment. Respect them to prevent any new infestations. Every action counts. Small efforts add up to big impacts. By staying informed, we can all protect our landscapes, our farms, and our communities from invasive threats. We really appreciate all of you taking the time to be here, and I wanted to point out some of the resources that you might see on the CDFA website. All the species we talked about, they're actually listed on the CDFA website, and you can view their important informations and any quarantines that might be happening. Regulatory and quarantine information are reviewed by species and updated with the most current information. The CDFA reports statewide information, but there is a list on the CDFA website with the county information, and you can contact your county agricultural commissioner for specific information about your county and invasive species you could report to them. Here's some of the links that we'll be sending out to you, and the other links that were within the slides we'll be sending out within the email as a thank you for attending today. And on behalf of myself and Lindsey, she's going to come back on here.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
these are our contact information. It's myself and Lindsey and Carrie. You can contact us with questions. We have a lot of information on our website, plenty of resources, and we could get you the best resources you need if you'd like some more information about some of these invasive species we talked about today.
Thank you, Cherie and Lindsey, for that excellent presentation. Really great stuff that you shared there. Appreciate you.